This is a part two of this one. It says recording size reached, so I just started another one of my own. And I happen to be looking at the screen when it does it. I often do not look at the screen, which is dangerous. If I'm doing something I think is important and I want to retain it and try to use it for later, because I can bump the screen at times and it quit recording. Anyway, it's the about 6:32 p.m. 23rd day of July, year 2023. To pick up where I left off, it's like, okay, let's say girlfriend of June 2019, who I resided with. Anyway, let's say she committed some kind of, was pregnant, kept it from me, whether she was pregnant with my kid or somebody else's. And let's say there's a whole, anyway. Starting spring or summer 2021, I did a lot of reporting over the matter via email, and I don't know what entities I brought it up with, from like IC3.gov to the Federal Trade Commission to possibly also Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. I don't know. If they got my emails, they got a lot of the information. The whistleblower thing or the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, because I started developing a comfort zone there. And yeah, I was doing emails at a rate I've never done in my whole entire life, and other activities, even with Google Photos links. And sometimes I'd feel like I was in a hurry. And sometimes that's where I was mostly hasty, not knowing if I had a big photo album with Google photo links, not reviewing each one and being in a hurry. And then especially if I ever texted opposed to email, could have been some content that would hurt some feelings. Never was my intentions. Never, ever. That my error on that wasn't so much lack of compassion. It was in a hurry about something I thought very, very serious. And I was relatively new in the growing realization of it from lots of circumstantial evidence, not a conspiracy theory. No. Whether that woman had a kid by me or not, I'm 90% to 100% certain that she was pregnant June 2019. There was a delivery via an incision, cesarean. I wonder where the kid went then and for how long. And even if it's somebody I know, but I don't know, especially me, I don't know. The kid could have been from her longtime boyfriend before me. But anyway, if especially on the governmental side, if they knew, it's like, she comes here a few times last year, 2022. It's like, why on God's green earth would these people not intervene? Like even if it's a scenario where they're going to be like, hey, Scotty, you are right. You are the father, but the way it's spanned, you're not going to get to meet the kid, even with her. On a plus side, or they live in such and such state or such and such country, wherever it could be, you're not going to have to worry about child support or any claim like that. Why could people not, really? And if she did do this, she committed a very, very bad, unlawful act. I would say it would be unlawful. I mean, drug use while pregnant. The worst scenario is the medical staff, like the Dr. Michael Colgrove and the others. Well, I'm saying, why could these people not do an intervention with her last year? And because, if she, unless something's changed, she's been doing a very destructive lifestyle. In very late 2021, when she first comes here, just the last week of December 2021, that's my first time to see her since May of 2020. And she was here not even an hour. She didn't even come in the living room. She come with a particular aunt, text me before she arrived and said, have the possessions set outside. I had to push her to get her possessions in May of 2020. I knew, I don't know if I'm going to get to finish this. I knew her and I were not going to get back together. Anyway, it's like, why couldn't they do an intervention to let me get over it? They know I reported it, and maybe even put her like on an ankle monitor or give her a chance to be sober. That means that I'm saying they could have gave us a bona fide chance to work something out, especially if they're wanting me to forgive a woman who put me through something like this. Secret pregnancy with your own kid, not even tell you. But okay. On the surgery day, June 28th, 2019, after she gets back into recovery, looking puffy, oxygen in her nose, the nurse brings up the discharge papers. National Park Medical Center, Arkansas, Malvern Avenue. She said, the anesthesia drug is in your system for 24 hours. Make no important decisions. I end up reading it later myself, even that day, holding the discharge papers en route back to here. She as soon as we got back here, she went to bed and laid down. I think turned on the air conditioner. I sat on the porch with the driver. Bought a snapper weed eater that day from Walmart, Albert Pike. She had to go to the pharmacy there. She took the motorized deal, the handicap deal. Anyway, I realized summer or so 2021, when I'm starting to analyze this on the increase or about the peak of it at that time, I'm like, these people talk, these medical staff, it's like they know what is going on and it's pre-planned and a whole bunch of people are in on it and it's like they enjoy it. I would have thought of whether it was coincidental or not. I think at this point in time, it was on purpose. Would you even call that a hint? These people don't want to be caught. Even if they are caught up with, it looks like they're going to get off scot-free about it. What I'm getting at is that nurse is saying the anesthesia drug after surgery. That's leading me to wonder, think, possibly believe that her brother-in-law, the Eric Lee, the anesthesiologist from Florida, very well could have been the anesthesiologist that day. And why am I thinking that is because about that time, either before this time, not long before it, or not long after it, she is on the phone with her mother here saying that, that man saying that her sister married to the Eric Lee anesthesiologist, that they're going to invest 10 grand into a surrogate mother so they can have their own biological child to save more money from child support, approximately up to $7,000 a month. And that was one of the key things I would put in my reporting, like to the whistleblower thing or the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, summer 2021, it just become really insane to me. One sister saying tubal to prevent pregnancy, and the way she went about it, made the appointment abruptly out of the blue over the phone, April or May 2019. So many months later, she's on the phone right in front of me here in this living room with her mother, who's no longer alive. So I knew something was suspicious. I knew it was increasing, especially when you tie in how the national park, whatever that place is, the staff would act. Definitely including the Dr. Michael Colgrove, his medical assistant, then down to surgery day, the first time to go in this particular building, a totally different building that's adjoined or connected to the National Park Hospital, not the Women's Center, the gynecology. We went into the National Park main entrance on June 26, 2019 for the registration, what they call the pre-registration. That's when she got the green medical bracelet on her wrist to wear it before the surgery day and through the surgery. She got that June 26, 2019. That's the only time I didn't go with her in the back, because I stayed outside on the phone with my irate mother, who was mad about a letter that Driver Control in Little Rock, Arkansas had received, concerned about her driving privileges. Anyway. And the way the new neighbors, the way they talk, like his mother earlier this year, like saying across from CG Roxanne LLC, saying that the bearings are going out in her car, but she only drives it 7 miles from Norman Apartments, Arkansas. Anyway, who was the anesthesiologist that day? Who? Why? How? Why, if they knew she is pregnant ahead of time, why did they give her a Xanax that morning? If she was pregnant, is it normal? Was she sedated before the C-section? Or do they just claim they do it quick enough before it'll go through the bloodstream and reach a baby? And keep in mind, there were 2 pelvic ultrasounds done before the surgery day. On one day, the second one, Dr. Michael Colgrove, after he prescribed Provera for 10 days. And he said her body was not reacting to that her uterus lining was very thick. He said she'd not been ovulating in a long time. So I put all that together. I've not even said that today on these two videos, that all the circumstantial evidence or the experiences I had interconnected that doctor knew she is pregnant, especially when his medical assistant walked out of the room right before he started the pelvic ultrasound to then girlfriend. I said out loud, I said, she's afraid she's got endometriosis. I even said her first name. The woman just puts the hands down by her side, doesn't say a word, walks out of the room. I thought, I'm in that moment that day, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, she got cancer. They already know from the first pelvic ultrasound. They're doing this for verification, validation. Because the first person that took the pelvic ultrasound was a woman and not a doctor. I have no reason to believe a doctor. The strange experiences that in my life ever that start with a doctor experience, to try to conclude with this. Since my mom was mad, Debbie Abbott, and would not loan out her car anymore for transportation, neither one of us had a driver's license. And then my mother, Debbie, was at fear for losing hers, and she ended up, well, she's just about to get it back. She just recently got reinstated over something that had nothing to do with me at DWI. Okay, I don't remember whose idea it was on the scat van for transportation, but it could have been girlfriends. But for the follow-up appointment after surgery, we go via a scat van, July the 11th, 2019. When we get on the van, there's nobody on there except for the driver. As soon as we get on the van, the guy's like, hey, so-and-so to her, says her first name. He's like, it's been a long time since I've seen you. Then we go sit in the back of the van where she wants to sit. I noticed there was cameras on it, whether they were working or not. She whispers in my ear, talks quietly. She says that's her cousin who she has not seen in years. He was a man, looked like he was in his early 40s, maybe late 30s, early 40s, no older than mid 40s, about 6'1", slender. He's wearing like khaki shorts that day, tennis shoes, a t-shirt, wore glasses. Kind of had I've never met him in person, but had a build of one of her brothers. Because she's a sibling of 5. Anyway, she tells me he's a cousin from like Odin, Arkansas, or Sims, Arkansas. She hadn't seen him in many years. She told me here farther back that she had lived in Sims, Arkansas at one time, like even during the 100-year ice storm, year 2001. And she went to Mount Ida school. Oh yeah, then people used to always say through here that David White, who's no longer the sheriff, that his family went to school with some of her family, some of her older siblings. People would tell me, some locals I've affiliated with or associated with for years, and I end up hearing it out of her own mouth later, is that some of her friends some of her family, like older siblings, were friends with David White because they went to Mount High School with him. A cousin of mine who's probably about the age of 80 was telling my mother as far back as 2011 that she knew of David White since he was a child, and he was adopted. The county tax collector. Or the former one for the past 10 or so many years. Anyway, we load up on the scat van July the 11th from this driveway here, this yard. Only the driver on there, picks up some other passengers along the way. We go through Mount Ida, Arkansas. After we do this follow-up appointment, the reason it's called the follow-up, I guess, with the Dr. Michael Colgrove, is because she had the surgery on June the 28th. So this is the only appointment after that. We get taken to the room by the same medical assistant rather. She has to For the second time, not counting surgery day, she has to, don't tell me this went dead, change into a gown. I guess partly because she could still have stitches is why they done it. He didn't know what he was all going to look at. And he only ended up looking at her lower abdomen. That's all he examined that day. Had her lay down and look at her lower abdomen, below her navel. I don't even know if he had to remove any stitches or not. I can't remember. She may have already removed them. It's not that it wasn't insignificant to me. I just don't remember those details. And keep in mind, on the front end, I thought all this was a tubal to prevent pregnancy. We got out of the way of no cancer, no nothing. And I was already afraid of that. And so was she, or that's what she expressed to me. Also, just say this real quick, though. Before the end of 2018 year, in this living room here, she tells me that when she, in her about 3 months of pregnancy in 2005 or 2004 year, she thought she had a tumor. She tells me that here basically before fall 2018. So then April or May 2019, she's popping up in the backyard off of a lawn chair, making the appointment for the tubal to prevent pregnancy. Well, anyway, okay, back to the scat van deal. July the 11th, 2019. I get on the phone. I'll just go ahead and say my biological father. He had a nephew who had been roommating with him, who had done that, I think, before, staying with him. A nephew of his and one of his sister's children, who's like in the age of 50. My biological father now, I think he turned 70 last month. Well, anyway, my mother, if she's still alive, she'd be 73 this September. This is 2023, 23rd day of July. Anyway, I'm on the phone with him saying we're going to have to ride the scat van back. And I wish we didn't have to. And I'd also like to look for some mowing equipment or a push mower. He tells me, he's like, oh, he must have me on speakerphone like he often would. He's like, oh, my nephew here who gave us the transportation on the 26th of June and the 28th of June, only because my mom quit loaning out the car, and we still would get a driver from Glenwood to Hot Springs. Anyway, he said he'll come and get y'all. He'll give y'all a ride back. And I said, okay, well, we'll call the scat van and cancel it. Well, I asked her if she wants to do it. I asked her because she's like changing out of the gown back into her regular clothes. The doctor and the medical assistant, he already left. The medical assistant, all she did was take us to that room. She didn't stay. Anyway, she said, yeah. And I said, well, is he willing to take me to like some place like Lowe's, Cornerstone Mall, so I can look at a push mower? He said, yes. I said, okay, good. I said, we'll be out front waiting. I remember she's even out there out front smoking a cigarette while we're waiting. It took 40 or so minutes. He arrived. We then went to Lowe's. After he parked, we're walking. We're like parked like a straight line in between the two doors, or a straight line from one of the doors, like maybe I can't really say north or south there, but the one on the right, when you're facing to walk in, like ahead of us is in between the two doors. One on the left, entrance, and one on the right, exit, or vice versa. Anyway, I see so many 100 feet walking ahead of us to my left, in the same clothes, the scat van driver. I don't know who pointed it out to her, girlfriend or me. Walking behind us with a bad back is the driver. Technically, biologically, a first cousin of mine who I didn't grow up with or anything like that. I just met him the first time, like spring of 2019. Well, anyway, she looked. I do remember this. Whoever pointed it out first, I think it was me. I think I'd point to her, because he's like over 200 feet away. I'm like, is that not your cousin, the scat van driver from earlier today? She turns and looks. He looks our way, and she acts really, really awkward. She acts like she doesn't want to look his way anymore, like just ignore the situation. So I'm saying, what are the mathematical odds of that situation? Look where I described this in some of my so-called reporting farther back, be it emails, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, or the whistleblower. I mean, how did they had to monitor the phones unless somebody was watching through something like Google Earth? How did they know, unless he just stayed out in the parking lot and watched the whole time? He was already parked, already out walking ahead of us. Unless it was completely coincidental, how did he know where we were going next? If he did, and I presume in this case he did know. How did they get that information? It'd be either from some kind of surveillance out of the parking, or over the phones, or somebody could hear the words in that medical office, that medical room, and they transport it to somebody else, or forward the information to somebody else. But they use dispatchers all the time with scat vans, like radios, CB, and other phone calls. What was why did that guy need to, why would he have even want to be there? Is it just because I was on the van earlier that day with her? Was he doing it in regard to her, me, or both? If it wasn't for both, it's one of us in particular. Very, very peculiar. I mean, it's almost like a stalker mentality, if not literally connected with the governmental conspiracy and or governmental business and or doctor. What did he do while he was in the store, Lowe's? I've brought this up farther back in the past. Would they still have the surveillance cameras of that? I know where I went. I looked at a push mower and then looked at blades, and then had a staff member help me pick out which blade to get for the Bowens, whatever push mower I got. She was the first one to operate it, if not the next day, that week in this yard. I put some of that video on Facebook. She even said before we started it, she's like, let's operate the machinery. But anyway, in true okay, I summed up on that, but in true summary on this, not just the Dr. Michael Colgrove, but Dr. Michael Colgrove indirect coworkers, if I may word it that way. Like the nurse pointing out anesthesia drug, 24 hours. That's after she gets back in the room from recovery, after the surgical procedures. Laryngoscopy, tubal to prevent pregnancy is all I knew of at the time. The nurse had already been in and out. A man shows up who's kind of bald-headed, in his 40s, about 6 foot, give or take, slender build, and he just talking to me. And this will lead me back to I want to say her first name, but who was on the phone with me in March of 2020, who I went to school with, a grade above me, Cat Hills High School. He just looks at me and he comes in there to talk to me. I think he first says to my girlfriend who's on the hospital bed, hasn't left yet. She may already have the IV in her back of her right hand. I can't say for sure on the timing of that. She may have already gotten the Xanax. I can't say for sure on the timing of it, but he just popped up and said, if you need anything, let me know, or I might be back in later to check. And he starts looking at me and talking to me. And he brings up, I don't even know how the conversation got started, but he starts talking about the doctor who went back to China, who delivered her daughter, my then girlfriend, her daughter from 2005. And he starts saying that either Dr. Colgrove or the other doctor who went back to China, he's like, oh, he delivered my son. He's like, he didn't want to be a head knocker. So that's why he left China. He said he saw scars on his back in a locker room. He said he didn't ask why. He said he had to wait for somebody to die before he could return to his homeland, China. So who is that man? If I saw a good photo of him again, or saw him in person, if he's still alive, I could probably identify him. About 6 foot, 6'1", slender, probably not even a solid 200 pounds. If he'd be way under 230, no more than maybe 210. A similar height and build of the driver, but that driver wasn't bald. He wore glasses. This guy I don't think wore glasses. Anyway, then I got this woman reaching out to me like in late 2019, Meta Messenger and other areas in early 2020, who I went to school with. And, I said in one of these videos, either this one or the other one, slept on her mother's fold-out couch with her there in her bedroom with her boyfriend, and I was with a mutual friend, opposite gender of me. Well, anyway, she got the conversation on doctors, I'm pretty sure, in childbirth and things like that. She even outright tells me on the phone, after she got the topic there, I think I asked, I'm like, well, have you ever had a surgery with the Dr. Michael Colgrove? or the other one. She said no, not the doctor that went to China. She said Dr. Michael Colgrove delivered her son. She says that to me on the phone. She said that the doctor who went back to China, I forget his name. Is it Lang? Anyway, she said that he had a history of breaking a baby's arms or shoulders during delivery. And she mentioned somebody I went to school with in my grade. I can't remember if he graduated or not. I'm not going to say the name. Kind of a blonde-headed, light brown guy, shorter than me. Was cousins with somebody else in the grade. I won't say her name either. She used to live off of Liberty Road for a time with her husband. Her father was a preacher, best I recollect, in high school. Anyway, I think her mother used to work for maybe Fish Nest in Glenwood, Arkansas. Well, anyway, but the one who called me March 2020, in or about, is After Dark. Telling me about the babies having their arms broken, shoulders broken, so on and so forth. I'm like, oh my gosh, you reminded me of something. You reminded me of what girlfriend told me here in 2018, that happened to her daughter in 2005. I said, I'm going to tell her this the next time I talk to her. I even asked her on the phone. I'm like, what are y'all trying to do? Have a class action lawsuit? Anyway, something has happened and lots of people know. They know. Does it affiliate with CG Roxanne LLC here in Montgomery County, Arkansas or not? I've noticed just a week ago or less, the sign's down over there. What's behind that? Not that it's any of my business, but just putting it in the pot of wonderment. Senator Boozman was over there. August 2019 with the plant manager. The plant manager is my second cousin on the Griblin side, my mother's side. That's August 2019. The surgery happened with this Dr. Michael Colgrove, gynecologist, June 28th, 2019. I just learned earlier today, somebody that I've only seen a few times in my life used to be supposedly head of DHS in Montgomery County, Arkansas. Which for me could affiliate to something with either South Carolina, Coca-Cola, I don't know. Has the local sheriff done something more than I know about? The ex-local sheriff, David White. Anyway, Dr. Abogany, cardiologist. I think she knows the anesthesiologist, Eric Lee. I just speculate that very strongly. Again, just to conclude on this thought, maybe. While her mother's in ICU, CHI, Hot Springs, Arkansas, she's telling me over the phone after they had the meeting with the doctor to find out the condition of her mother, said that the Eric Lee looks at her and says, do you want me to tell or you want me to explain to them or you? And then the Dr. Abogany started talking, and I just happened to know of her name, and I had the one appointment with her in 2015. It struck me as very peculiar. Like, why would he be asking that? Why would he even be that comfortable? He's either worked there before, or they cater to him, or he's very close to her, or he's overcompensating for insecurity. He's overcompensating for something. It struck me in that moment, because keep in mind, I already typed about him less than a year earlier over an adoption matter in Port Orange County, Florida. I already knew that his wife's motives for a particular adoption of a teenager about the age of 15 then, I guess. I'd have to do the math, 14, 15. I already knew my thoughts of his wife with and without what then girlfriend explained about her older sister. And I'm not saying any of that to be mean. I started even thinking that in summer 2021 that they sold her heart out of country, India, organ, not organ donor. And what made me think that is she tells me on the phone that Dr. Abogany tells the family that regarding the family member who was in intensive care unit said her heart is fine. Everybody already knew she was on a ventilator, breathing for her. In other words, life support. What she's trying to say in a nice way is that she was brain dead. But something struck me as that, and then I learned in September or sooner, that used the funeral home, Thornton Funeral Home, Hot Springs, Arkansas. Cousins either run it or own it. And then again, she tells me last year under this roof that some of her cousins do security for the Arkansas governor. I bring up some things about Norton LifeLock and Identity Guard or the dark web. She said some of her family affiliates with the dark web. She kept saying who she dated was a half brother to the Hot Springs PD chief of police, and said she thought that kept him out of some of the trouble that he never got into. She openly, boldly said that he and the half brother of Chaplin, I don't know how to say his name, paid 10 grand to get somebody back that was like held hostage. Who's also worked for Hot Springs PD for lots of years would be how I got my last name from an adoption, a biological child of the late Doyle Abbott. Frank Abbott retired over there. In late 2015, like the day before Christmas or something, I see him in the electronics section or near the electronics section, Walmart Albert Pike. Frank Abbott.